industry, producing jobs, bringing in revenue to the local government and to the state government, and have that money and revenue go back to the citizenry. And what was resulting in, we had an agency that I think was just being overly heavy-handed, and that they were not working with the industries the way they were supposed to be working with. So I thought, that this would be the best way to do it, to have someone that can come in there, watch them on a daily basis, see what they're producing, see how they're treating the constituency, see how the investigations are being done. And that's one aspect that we have of this legislation, is to make sure that they get appropriate training on how to do regulatory investigations.
Excuse me, these are all great points that you're bringing up, because like transparency and non-responsiveness, I think, is like the biggest issue for the Cannabis Control Commission. Like we were the ones that broke the Lorna McMurray story when she passed away. And it was so many months after, and the Cannabis Control Commission found out about it, the commissioners, from the Boston Globe that reported what we reported. So they found out from the media, their own commissioners, which, like, they're covering it up, like there are investigations even among themselves, which is really, to me, like there's a problem.
And Michael, that's part of the problem too. If you look at, since the creation of the Cannabis Control Commission, dating back to April of last year, we have a mediation going on between the commissioners and the director and the employees below on who's responsible for certain aspects of the commission and their responsibilities. To me, that's ridiculous. We've got a commission, they're supposed to be in charge with the oversight, and then you've got an investigative or regulatory staff that they should be overseeing. I don't understand how we have an agency where the regulatory staff underneath is not complying with the commissioners, or there's a mediation to find out who runs the agency.
That's what it seems like to me, is like the executives at the agency. Sean Collins, I'll say it by name, he's been there the longest. If you look at the commissioners, there's been a lot of turnover. Nobody is serving their full term, it looks like. So he's become the power guy. And I think it's very interesting. I would love to know what's actually going on behind the scenes of that mediation myself. But going back,
Mike, if you look at the statute, the executive director, as you stated, Mr. Collins, and the chair of the commission, their responsibilities over the commission are basically the same. So Sean and the chair have the same basically role or responsibilities, but the executive director reports to the commission. So I understand that they may have duplication in responsibilities, but the executive director still reports to the commission, and that's where the oversight should be coming in.
Organizing like the local cannabis workers. And they have some things that they want to see happen on the state level. And I just wanted to ask you if you'd be like interested in thinking about those or supporting those. Some of those, like cannabis worker safety reforms. One is mandating that larger cultivation sites be required to create internal employee-run health and safety committees and or mandate the hiring of health and safety positions, just like they are required for compliance. Would you support something like that?
Yes, actually, so I agree with, and actually those are good ideas. Something my office and my staff and I have been talking about is, if you look at how the Department of Environmental Protection and the Division of Labor and Industries work, you have DEP, that DEP will oversee the environmental impact. And then you have, say, like removing asbestos. They will do the testing. They will make sure, look at the environmental safety aspect of it. Then you have the Division of Labor and Industries that comes in, and they oversee the workplace practices, that you have to remove it wearing a respirator, those types of things. So I was also looking at that type of initiative to see, think of OSHA on the federal level, and this being a state level entity, which we already have in existence for other labor, for other types of manufacturing or other types of industries. But I do think there should be something in there that we have a state level enforcement or some sort of state level of regulation or protection for the workers.
Welcome. We're live. Mike Crawford, Young Jerks. That was from last night. Very special night. We seem like we're making progress here. You can see it live on the show. Look at my hair. I'm disheveled right now. I was you can tell I'm a little late because I was really listening to last night's show. I'm into it. I hope everyone else was too. I think a lot of people were into it last night. I want to thank Mass State Senator Michael Moore for coming on the show and talking about the issue that we've been talking about quite a bit for a long time. The employees, the worker safety issue. He lent a lot of support last night. He's got a bill that he's supporting. I was very happy to get him on the show and get him on the show with Danny, who did great as well on the show. We've got some great guests tonight. We're talking about Trulieve. We're going back to Trulieve in Florida. I have a special guest for you, a couple guests in the green room right now. The first one I'm going to bring up is from Florida. He's a Trulieve worker who has quite a bit of information about that corporation. We're also going to be taking phone calls tonight. 978-560-3155. When I get that set up on my I'll do that right now. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring up James. This is our first guest tonight from Florida. We'll have him introduce himself, and while I'm doing that, I'll set up the phone lines as well. So let's do that. James, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You got that nice deep Florida Southern voice.
Yeah, it tends to be one of the better parts of me, I reckon. People love to listen to it.
I do. I want to hear you a little louder because I'm loud, and I don't want my voice to overwhelm you. It sounds so good.
Yeah,
Better than
I'll
mine.
pick it up.
Yeah. So give us, your quick introduction, 5 minutes on who you are, your 5-minute life story, we call it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I started working for Trulieve, July of 2018. I was there back when our pay stubs actually said George Hackney Incorporated before it actually said Trulieve. Back when, we were absolutely begging for anything during the summertime, stuff like that for our outdoor employees and anything like that. But yeah, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. Got out of the Marine Corps, got into law enforcement for a little bit, tore both of my shoulders. Had a buddy that just started working at Trulieve in the maintenance department, and he was like, "Man, you need to come on." He's like, "You can get hired here, and blah 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 blah." And I was like, I don't know. So, but I jumped in on it and ended up working there for 2 years and 11 months. I oversaw the opening of multiple sites as far as like product acquisition. So I did product acquisition for Jefferson County, Florida, Madison County, Florida, a bunch of the buildings out in Quincy, Florida as well, like the expansions to buildings 2 through 8, I believe is how many they had by the time we were done. And essentially just kind of got mixed around everywhere. Also, our production facility in Midway, Florida, was responsible for all of the product acquisition for that. So I kind of started off just being a warehouse guy and very quickly ended up doing a whole lot more just because of the experience that I had, but they never offered to pay me for any of it or to give me a title. I just stayed a material handling lead. And yeah, so it was definitely a fun, very quick journey as far as that goes. Ended up just doing some basic help for somebody who was behind. They were like, "This is 6 months worth of orders. I need you to go through and like help me catch up. We'll get it done throughout the week." And I was like, "Okay." By 4 p.m., I came in and I handed her the stack, and I was like, "All right." And she was like, "You done for the day? You quitting? You giving up?" And I was like, "No, I'm done." And she's like, "What do you mean you're done?" "I'm done." And so she went through and started randomly picking them just to make sure that I did it right. And she was like, "How?" I was like, I don't know. I'm just efficient. And from then on, it was just like, "Hey, we need you to do this, do that, do this, do that." And it was a nonstop thing that it just kept on and essentially became my thing. And I was also responsible for training a whole lot of people, to include the new site manager that they had for their Massachusetts operation when they first opened it. His name was Adam Shalou. He's a really nice guy. I found out today he actually doesn't work for them anymore. But so I was responsible for training people on forklifts, site managers, and other leads and stuff on the things that they needed to do. And I also, towards the end of my tenure there, was responsible for gathering employee complaints, concerns, etc., that they were too scared to bring up to HR. That was like my last real task that was given to me outside of my department. And I think that played a large role into my removal from Trulieve, because uh, I didn't have the fear aspect that a lot of the employees had, because they were all worried they were going to get fired if they went and complained. And I was just like, buckle up, y'all. And so it was what it was. And so I'd go in and I'd be like, hey, these are the complaints, boom, and I'd sit down and they're like, you're not going to knock? No, I'm not. Like, I'll make sure you're not busy, but if I see you're in here playing on your phone, I can see you through the window, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to address the issues. And they didn't like that.
We have a phone number tonight too. If people want to call in, 978-560-3155. Some folks have been making note that I haven't been able to get back to them. They want to speak to me. It's very difficult for me to get back to everybody. I get a lot, especially after some of these Trulieve shows. This is what the show's for. If you want to talk to us, talk to me right now. This is the best time to do it. 978-560-3155. We're speaking to James. He's an ex-Trulieve employee in Florida, worked in a lot of different sites doing operations work. We had spoken briefly on the phone, and one of the first stories that blew me away was about the documented workers who were on where they work visas, on green cards, and how Trulieve treated them, I think, horribly and inhumanely. I would just like you to tell us about that story. And I know it's in depth, and take your time. Tell us everything about it.
Yeah. So a lot of the Latino employees that we had were in the country on work visas and stuff like that. And a lot of them were on, excuse me. A lot of them were on the harvest team, that and the outdoor crew, meaning that they were at what we call Juniper Creek and Taloja Creek. Those were our two outdoor grow facilities. And we used to joke and call them third world, because when you went over there, the way that they would stay cool during the breaks before they started taking breaks away was essentially 3 sheets of plywood thrown up, or about 4 sheets of plywood thrown up. So you have one open side and then it's enclosed, and it's so short that you had to stay hunched over in order to kind of fit in it and get in the shade. For those who aren't from North Florida or this area, it gets very hot during the summertime. I'm talking heat indexes of like 118 degrees. And when you're outside working all day and the only thing you have is a water cooler that may or may not have water in it, being able to get out of the direct sunlight is really important. It got so bad that people started smearing fecal matter on the porta potties that we had, out of frustration. So we had an employee that was part of the drive team. Her name was Claudia, and she is very bilingual. Her family were immigrants, and she's the one that actually blew the lid on it. So when she found out, she went to her superiors and she was like, hey, is this true that if people working for Trulieve, they can't renew their green cards, they can't renew their work visas? And they were like, yeah. And she goes, well, why aren't we telling them this? And they were like, well, it's not important. And she was like, yes, it is. This is big, because these people will get deported. It's not they might get deported. They will get deported. And they were like, well, we're working on that. And so anyway, they didn't want to tell the employees. They actually told her to be quiet.
So let's explain that to people who don't know. I'm not aware of
okay.
how immigration works, but I understand it to mean that if someone has a green card or other status, legally works here, has the documentation, part of that documentation is they have to have a legal job. They have to show that they're working. And because cannabis is considered to be federally illegal and immigration is done through the U.S. federal government, they don't accept work at Trulieve as a federal legal job. So therefore the service, their work time doesn't count. And these people get deported and think that they were good at the whole thing. They thought they were doing the requirements. They thought they were all set. And Trulieve knows this and didn't tell the employees. Is that correct? That is
100% what happened. That is entirely correct.
That seems almost illegal. Like if it's not illegal, it's immoral. Like
It definitely is. It
and
is definitely
and an
immoral.
employee made them aware of this issue, and they still didn't want to do anything about it. Is what you're telling
Correct. Yeah, and with Claudia being part of the drive team, she went to all of the sites, all of the grow sites. And what she did is she took an English version and a Spanish version, and she put them by the time clocks. Naturally, people clock in and they're like, "Ooh, what is this?" And so, as people were reading it, all of a sudden there's an uproar. People are like, "Hey, am I going to get deported because I work here?" And Trulieve kind of stayed quiet on it, and then finally they released this super cringy, very unheartfelt message of like, we understand your concern, we're going to work to push legislation to change this and yada yada yada. In other words, they're talking about doing like a 2-year process to solve a problem that needs to be fixed right now. And they just made it feel like you couldn't trust them to actually go to bat for you, because everyone knows that legislation takes forever in the United States. It takes forever. So you're not going to push for people to be able to get their green cards and work visas renewed in the course of like 3 months. And some of these people only have 3 to 6 months before they have to go renew. And so when she posted that, it overnight, we lost a ton of people. Our entire harvest team started having to work massive overtime hours just to keep up with demand. And even then they couldn't, because of how many people they lost. At the time, the person running that department, Mayra Roman, tried really, really hard to, keep people calm and everything, because she was upset about it too. But she was, trying to make sure that, like, hey, I'm going to go to bat for you guys. And she was. But at the end of the day, she was just the person running that department. She wasn't a big shot. And but there was a group of people there who tried to keep people calm. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to stay calm when there's the chance that they might get deported out of the country and away from their families, because the owner of their company doesn't care about them. And
now, did you actually know anyone that was actually deported that way, that didn't know? And that,
in all honesty, they made us tight-lipped on that. They completely, if they heard you talking about it, you would get in trouble. And anytime that there was any kind of we'll just say disruption and people wanted to talk about it, that was a big no-no. You were not allowed to discuss issues, even if it was at other sites. And there's a couple of those I could go into where I was told to be quiet or that I would get written up or fired about other things that took place over the time that I was there. But yeah, so we weren't actually allowed to talk to them. And the harvest team, it is really funny. The harvest team, being mostly Latinos and Latinas, were actually kept away from everyone else just because of the nature of their work. And so it was really difficult to get any chance to talk to them or to even get to know who they were. You would see them come in on a bus or take their own vehicles. They would show up, go to wherever the harvest was happening, and then you wouldn't see them for the rest of the day. They were in there harvesting from about 7:30 in the morning until 9-10 o'clock at night.
We would reach out to Trulieve and ask them for their end of it, but they don't respond to us. So I'm going to say this is our new slogan when we do these shows. Call in Kim. Call in Kim. Our phone number is 978-560-3155. This year, we're also going to be working on some T-shirts. I know that, or some merchandise. I think Call in Kim is going to be like a great T-shirt I want to wear. Call in tonight, Kim. 978-560-3155. Anyone from Trulieve that wants to speak on any of this, or any ex-employee. Let me ask you a question, James. Did you ever sign a non-disclosure agreement? Did they ask you to sign one?
If I remember correctly, they gave us an NDA when I first got hired. I know that they made us sign a non-compete as well. But I think they only had like a short time as far as NDA goes. I know that anytime I receive something like an NDA, unless it's for, something that's a hobby of mine, I don't sign it. And I'm very honest about it. I tell people, like, look, I'm not going to sign a non-disclosure, because if something shady happens or if somebody gets hurt, I'm not going to sit here and be willing to, in case, be the fall guy, because I've seen it happen.
Absolutely.
Where the upper echelon will mess up something, and then somebody on the low end catches flack, and no,
Right.
Not going to be me.
Another good tip on those too is like I did this on I got screwed at one company I worked for with like a 1 year anti-compete, which was the worst. It killed me. But after that, I realized that I could pull another move, which was to cross out. Like there was one instance where I signed a contract and they wanted a 1-year anti-compete, and I crossed it out and wrote 30 days. Like, I'll give you 30 days. Like, that's it, 1 month. And they accepted it. Like, so, I think people need to think on their feet sometimes. If someone offers you a 1-year anti-compete, turn around and say 2 weeks or 30 days. See what they say. You know what I mean?
I didn't even think about doing that. In all honesty, that's really smart.
Yeah. I learned that from some old pros, and they were with me in the room, and they didn't sign. They had more leverage than me. They didn't sign it at all, and they got accepted. Like I skidded through with the 30 days, which was pro move. When you hang around pros, you learn pro moves.
Right.
We have a phone number tonight. People can call in, Kim. So that's really good that you're kind of free on that end. I want to ask you, when that went down, that must have been very stressful to see that going on with the workers and know that they weren't informed, and some of them were being deported, and you're working for this company. I mean, how did that make you feel when that was going on?
I was actually incredibly ticked off about it. So I would to put it in perspective, the type of leader that I was when I was running my team is I would constantly be approached by site managers, et cetera, and they would ask me, "How are you getting your guys to work 20 hours of overtime a week and not quit?" And I would tell them, because I treat them like people. Like when it was wintertime, I went through the extra steps to order them stuff for being outside during the winter. Like I ordered a little space heater, gloves, stuff like that other people were being forced to go without. And I'm like, I take care of my people. During the summer times when it was hot, I would go to the, without asking, because if I asked, they would tell me no. But I would go to the gas station. I'd buy Gatorades. If I knew they smoked, I would buy their favorite pack of cigarettes. If they dipped, I'd buy the dip that they liked. Doesn't matter if they smoked Newports or Marlboros or whatever. I would, I knew my team well enough to know what they smoked, and I would go get that. It's just little things, because I didn't make enough money to actually give them like money and be like, "Hey guys, here's $100 for everything," And since I couldn't do that, I did what I could out of my own pocket. And I actually got in trouble for that my first year. For leaving the clock on company time, even though I literally just went across the street, because the gas station was essentially across the street. And but I told him, I was like, that's how I do it. And I felt like that about everybody. And that's one of the reasons why HR came to me towards the end of my time there and was like, well, for some reason, everybody talks to you. Everybody tells you why they're mad. Everybody tells you why they're quitting. We don't know why. And so you're going to be the go-to person. And I was like, okay, I'm perfectly fine with that, because at the end of the day, I want everybody to go home. I want everybody to be safe. I want everybody to be successful. And whether it's my team or somebody else's team. So seeing them get treated that way really, really made me mad. And, that's when Claudia and I started getting kind of close, because, I was asking her like, "Hey, how's everybody doing? Are they okay?" Blah, 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 blah. But it was infuriating, because I remember there were people sitting in their vehicles and they were crying, because not only do they have to worry about getting deported because all of the work they didn't count, but now they know that they're going to have to quit their job, and now they're going to be unemployed for however long, trying to find a replacement job that's going to take them on with a work visa. Right. And it was really frustrating. It was borderline infuriating.
I think it's immoral. It's like,
Yeah,
it's one thing if you let them know and they make that choice to get deported and just work there, for the short term, but to deceive them like that when and you don't even inform these folks that they're going to get deported because this work doesn't count. And it's not like, something that's common knowledge. Like even the average American wouldn't think of that. Like these seem like legal jobs, but they're not,
especially because federally, they're federally taxed.
Yeah. It's because of the federal law.
And my favorite defense people try to use is like, well, maybe Kim didn't know. Kim was an attorney. She knew. One of my favorite things to prove that Kim had friends in the legal beagle business that were a part of legislation being pushed through, knowing when things were going to be okay and when they weren't. So 420, everybody that partakes in cannabis knows about 420. On April 20th of 2019, everyone gets pulled off of their stations and like, "Hey, we're doing pre-rolls." And this was like the week before, or like half a week before April 20th. So it was like the 16th or so. And we normally, get off at 5, but instead we were working till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night doing pre-rolls. Well, that's confusing because as far as we all knew, pre-rolls were illegal. yeah, they were up for, debate in, the whole legal beagle world, but they hadn't been said to be legal. On April 20th, pre-rolls got approved as legal, and we already had thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pre-rolls already made and in the process of being shipped to our dispensaries in South Florida, which means that Kim knew that this was going to happen. She already knew and opted to just not say anything because, and the only thing I can assume, having spoke to her in person, is that she was worried her competition would find out, like Cureleaf and all of them, and Medman, and she didn't want them to be able to have as equal footing as she did. And when it came to having, this is the new thing, it's legal today, so we have it today. And that was when I realized that she is because this happened before.
She's very shrewd. She's very
Yes.
shrewd. Kim, call in. Like, Trulieve may respond. Who knows? Maybe, some other journals will pick this up and they'll actually respond to some of these allegations.
And the reason I love doing stuff like this now is because they actually offered me a job last year for it's between $70,000 and $80,000 a year to come back and essentially oversee the logistics to their expansion to Georgia. And so I go through a month-long hiring process. And at the end of it, I lose all contact. Nobody's contacted me. They already offered me the job. I've already signed the paperwork. And so I'm like, hey, like, when am I supposed to start? And they were like, oh, when we went to put you in the system, we saw that you were a former employee. And I was like, yes, I told you guys that 2 separate occasions during my interview. And they were like, yeah, but you're listed as a no rehire. And then they wouldn't tell me why. So I had to start reaching out to people that I knew that still work there in HR. And they said it was because of burnt bridges. And I was like, well, can you show me where? And they had absolutely nothing to give me. Nobody could show me. And the only thing I could remember is I got falsely ridiculed for writing a Reddit post. And I was told that they thought that I was the one that wrote it. They thought I was the one that wrote it because it was written correctly. Meaning proper commas and periods and etc. And I was like, well, I appreciate the compliment. But you essentially just said that every employee that works here is stupid. I promise you there's other people here that could have written that, but yeah. And that's the only thing that I can assume but we addressed that before I ever stopped working there beforehand. And plus that was a year before that, 2 years before that. And, so since they said that I burnt bridges, I'm like, well, you know what? I'll talk about everything now.
Yeah, right now you will. So 978-560-3155. Call in, Kim. Call in, Trulieve. If you have a comment on this, call in tonight. Don't save it for another reporter and come back and with a script. With the script, we have some comments I want to read, and then I got a lot more questions for you. First comment from a Facebook user. They write, "I'm so excited to hear perspective from another department. The bullshit was truly everywhere." So obviously they are also a former employee at Trulieve. Our friend Caleb Tasky writes, "Mike, if you need help taking all these calls, I'd be happy to take some of your overflow." He's got a show too for Trulieve employees. If you want to find another show to air your story, I would also recommend his show, The Fine Print. You can find them on YouTube. Another Facebook user says, "I am scared to even ask what they were being paid." I think he's talking about the workers who had the visas and the documents. Do you have any idea what they might have been being paid?
$10 an hour.
$10 an hour. Okay. Another Facebook user writes, "They're blame shifters, anything but take accountability, illegal or not. It's always the next guy's fault, never Trulieve's fault." Another Facebook user, getting some Facebook comments tonight, wrote, "Trulieve has it written in writing that Kim is personally involved in all aspects of the company. I'll find the quote in a second." I know that Kim did personally block me on Twitter, so maybe she's listening online tonight. I hope she is. Call in, Kim.
That's awesome.
978-560-3155. I don't want to have to put it on a t-shirt, Kim. Just call in tonight.
That's a badge of honor.
We have some other folks laughing along, giving us the thumbs up, and we have a phone call. Let's take this call, see who it is. I think I know who it is. Yeah, this is going to be a good call. Hold on, let me turn you on. Hold on, listener. Turn down your I can hear some feedback. What's your name, sir? I know who it is, but tell us who it is.
Caleb Teskey.
Caleb Teskey's
Caleb
on the
Teskey.
line. What's up, brother?
How you doing, my friend?
Good. What do you got for us?
I just thought it was interesting, the comments about how the immigrant workers were being treated, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Trulieve just won an award for inclusivity and diversity, and they were bragging all about how they take care of the people of color and the women and all this stuff. And then to hear that they wouldn't even inform their immigrant workers about the possibility of being deported, boy, that seems fucking criminal to me. At the very least, it's incredibly deceptive, but at the worst, that seems criminal. And I just wanted to comment on that, because that, just another disgusting example of the corporate culture at Trulieve. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Caleb. What do you think, James?
You're welcome.
I mean, he's not wrong, and that was one of the things I noticed. So, obviously, I don't know if you can tell by the way that I act and the way that I speak, but I've done a lot of blue collar work over the years, and Trulieve was the first place where it tells you during the application process that this is a blue collar job. It makes it very clear. I don't know why that stood out to me. I guess just because it was so abnormal to see that. It's like, this is a blue collar work environment, yada yada yada. But everything was treated like a corporate, like just a jail cell is what it felt like. My favorite example of this was, we had an employee who was late coming back from lunch because she had been hit by a bus. She had been hit by a bus, and they still pegged her for what they called half a point because she was late. And I think it was, once you accumulated 5 points, and your points stayed on there for a year. So 365 days. It wasn't like if you got it in November, it was gone in January. It's 365 days. If you had 5 points, meaning 5 tardies, or 10 tardies or 5 absences over the course of a year, you were terminated, and you couldn't be promoted. You couldn't change departments, anything. But she was hit by a bus.
Employee badly hurt when she was hit by the bus?
I to be honest, I don't think she was, because she did come back. I just remember a bunch of yelling because I was actually on the forklift, and I heard a bunch of yelling. And naturally, once she left, I stopped, and I was like, "What was that all about?" They were like, "Well, she got hit by a bus. That's why she was late." And like, there was damage to her car. You could see it when she left. But she had been hit by a school bus, and
so she was in a car, and
Mhm.
so she had a car
Yeah. She was in a
accident, she got
car.
delayed, and
Yeah,
instead
but
of being like, "Oh, we're like," I've actually had, like, I think something similar happened to me and my family, and I think that the work was cool about it. I mean, these things, I think it's more like, thank God you're here at work. Do you want to take the rest of the day off? That's an appropriate response.
Yeah, we had another employee like 2 weeks
Not
after
to
that
get
hydroplane.
fined,
Yeah.
ding against you. That's just
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Jay.
Oh, I was gonna say we had another employee like 2 weeks later. It rains a lot in North Florida too. So we had an employee who hydroplaned right next to the gate, and actually slams their car into the trees at the gate and gets out and is trying to run to the gate so she can go clock in because she doesn't want to get in trouble. And again, somebody gets hit with half a point because of a car accident that is, beyond their control. And, people can say, well, they were going too fast. She was literally pulling into the gate when she hydroplaned. I mean, she was doing like 15 miles an hour. And, sorry. But it just happens. And instead of being like you said, like, well, at least you're okay. That's all that matters. They were like, oh, well, you're late. That's half a point. And you're like, why am I even here? I might as well just go home. If you're going to peg me with half a point, might as well give me the whole point and I'll go home.
Right. And you saw some other things too. That I know there was even a tragedy that no one has heard about that you started to tell me about.
Oh, yeah. So
you want to get into that or not? Because I don't know.
I can.
Do you think it's safe to do so? I just want to make sure that we're not,
I live my life on the edge.
Okay. Go for it then.
Talking about Amanda Russo.
I think so. You mentioned it on the phone call the other day.
Yeah. So there was a woman that had the same position I did at our Midway facility. Her name was Amanda Russo. She was a very sweet person. She was very nice. And she stopped showing up for work. And naturally, some of her coworkers were concerned. Management didn't care because we had over an 80% turnover rate. It was not abnormal for somebody to just not come in anymore. And anyway, so somebody goes over to her apartment. Long story short, they find out that she had unalived herself with medication. And but the what made so many people mad is that she had been reporting for an extended period of time that she was being sexually harassed at work, and they wouldn't do anything about it. One of the big things with Trulieve is a lot of the employees there have relationships. It's a lot. And but I think that that was just something that they kind of let slide, because at the Midway facility there was also the issue of where they had to let go of the site manager and his assistant because they were having relationships, and they, when they found out, they told them, no, you can't do that because your guys are upper management, don't do that. Then they did it again, and the girl, when she found out she was going to get in trouble, she suddenly claimed like, oh well, he came on to me and his sexual harassment. So I think it got lumped all into that, and that's why they didn't want to touch it. But she had been reporting it for more than a little while, and it was really strange because after she died, one of the managers, and I'm not going to say his name because this is all alleged, was let go. He had been a long-term employee. He was a manager before I started. He actually was a part of my interview process. But that was we had heard that was the manager that was the cause of the problem, and she dies, and then suddenly he's gone, and that was that. And if you got caught talking about it, you got threatened with being terminated. Alec Dahl, I'll throw his name out there. He was the site manager where I worked at the time. And I was trying to explain to somebody why, look, if you have someone who's talking to you this, that, or whatever kind of way, you can come talk to me because I don't want another Amanda situation. And naturally, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So I was trying to explain it as politely as possible. And he comes up and he looks at me and he goes, and I was like, really? Like, really? I can't tell people to come talk to me because I don't want what happened to someone else to happen again. And mind you, I didn't use her name, but everybody knew who I was talking about, even though it was at another facility. That's how big it was, because everybody knew that there had been a report, but HR couldn't find anything. They couldn't, and they just swept it under the rug. I still have the last text message she sent me, I believe. I think it transferred over when I got my new phone. But
do you know what she said? What was it about?
It was about work, funny enough. It was about work, and we were talking about something that was being ordered. Let me see. There it is. November 29th, 2019. She's like, hey, sorry, you got to forgive the delay. Just listen to the voicemail. I didn't get a lot of work-related calls on this phone. I thought it would be on the other one, so I wasn't in a rush to check it. Love to see what the issue is for that purchase order. Shoot me an email. Hope you had a wonderful holiday. Talking about Thanksgiving. And that was just how she was overall as a person. She was real upbeat, real bubbly, real nice, real sweet, and always wanted everybody to be happy. And so like when that happened, it was like a gut punch, because as a material handling lead, I do a lot of conversing with other material handling leads. Like, hey, do you guys have any extra of this or extra of that? We're trying to, save money and cut corners, because they don't want us purchasing this or this because it's almost the end of the fiscal year. And so they're trying to make the books look good. That was another thing, was they were always about, hey, you guys are just gonna have to go without for the next month because we're closing the books up and we want the numbers to look good. And it made our jobs so difficult. So we're constantly pinging off each other. Like, hey, do you guys have any of this that we can borrow to the end of the month? And then and then we would order it afterwards and then trade it back to each other to make the books look good.
So how old was she? Do you think would she?
She was, if I remember correctly, she was in her late 20s.
So another
and you couldn't,
a young woman.
Yeah, and we tried looking up her obituary. We couldn't find her obituary anywhere. We couldn't find anything about it when she passed away. Like, we knew she did, but we couldn't find anything on her. It was just like she vanished. Poof. But we
hear
know
a lot. We hear this a lot in this industry about the sexual harassment, the abuse, and also about the health and safety, which I want to talk about in a second. We also had some more comments come in. Megan, who worked at Trulieve as well, she's been a recent guest on the show. She writes, everything is swept under the rug with them until they are forced to face something, and then people just start getting fired with nothing ever being addressed or any real change happening. I like when you said that the manager was like, it's like, don't ask, don't tell. It reminds me of that whole Bill Clinton thing about being gay in the military. Don't ask, don't tell. It's so stupid. Right. And that's kind of what a lot of these corporations that they rely on is don't ask, don't tell. I don't want to know. It keeps me not legally culpable if I don't know, if we don't talk about it. But I'm glad you're talking about it, James. Is someone that I know quite well recommended you, and I know that you've been talking to them for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I've been being fed James information. I never met you until, like basically last week or, started talking to you, but I've been getting information from you for quite a while. So I want to thank you for that. Number one, but number two, I want to ask about the labor issue. Like in Florida, I know even just starting, labor unions in cannabis in Massachusetts, where it's supposed to be a labor, friendly place, is very difficult. We're having some success, but we're also having failures too. In Florida, it seems like it just doesn't happen at all. Did you see any of that happening? Like, did you see any of that labor organizing activity happening at these Trulieve locations? Were you involved in any of it? Or do you not even want to speak on it because it could be ongoing? Like, I'm just.
Nah, it's I can talk about it. So really funny. For most of my life, I was a very anti-union person. I was like, I don't need to pay somebody to talk on my behalf. Typically, look, I mean, you hear the way that I talk. Okay.
Southern boy. Southern
right.
boy. Yeah.
I don't need anybody to talk for me. I ain't gonna pay anybody else any of my money. But after the way that people were being treated and I saw it, and then when I would bring it up and the way it would just get shut down, I was like, dude, we need somebody else. We need somebody that has some kind of punching power, because if you started talking about issues, they would just fire you, like boom, and you just come into work and be like, hey, where's Joe? And Joe got fired for what? And we don't know. They said he's fired and he ain't coming in today. And between that and people not showing up, we were always overworked. But before I get into what I was doing, my favorite thing that I saw happen as far as like employees taking initiative, we had 2 drivers get shot at during a delivery. They were in a box truck, and everybody in the area knows what our trucks look like. They are plain white box trucks that look like they need to be retired. And so these individuals essentially stalked the truck, found out when it left, got it on the highway, and started shooting at the drivers. For those who don't know, our trucks have cameras outside of facing the road, inside facing the drivers, inside and at the back facing the back door of the truck. And I think they've added some more since then, but that was the standard. And in the video, because I got to see the video footage, I was friends with the people in security whose office was right next to mine. And so like as they're reviewing stuff, naturally I can just be like, be nosy, And anyway, these 2 drivers get shot at, and they are told the next day, or they are told that night that they still have to come into work the next day. They still have to come to work. Well, the drive team was really tight. They were really, really tight. And so they were like, well, we can't say we're protesting because we'll get fired. But legally, they can't stop us from using our sick days. And so everybody used the sick day. And they actually did it for multiple days. They did it about the second day. They started throwing out, we're going to fire you guys. We're going to fire all of you. We don't care what the repercussions are. We are going to let you go. Like they were pulling people from my department to drive trucks and be ride-alongs, because when you have active product, you have to have at least 2 people in the vehicle to kind of, I guess, monitor each other. I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't work, but anyway, that's the point behind it. And so they started threatening to fire people, and if they didn't come in, and again, it's the world where you have to have an income, you have to have a check. Yeah. And so these people started coming in one after the other, and they'd be like, well, so-and-so came in, so you guys need to come in too, because obviously what you guys are trying to do is done. And so then somebody else would come in, and then it's just rinse, repeat.
You're picking them off one by one.
Yeah. And so after I saw stuff like that, I went home. I'm a big IT guy. I'm real big into knowledge and stuff like that and learning. I was like, okay, this is time to set my personal beliefs aside and see what there is for unions, because there's got to be one. And I found our mutual contact, and I mean, I just like a therapist, I just emotionally dumped everything. And I'm one of those people where I love having evidence. I love backing things up. I generally do not say something if I have no way to immediately prove it right then and there. Like I told you before I came on today, I've got emails right here in front of me from when I worked there. Same thing when I approached him, I was like, look, here's the evidence. Boom, 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 boom. And he was like, oh my God, we're going to fly somebody out to talk to you like tomorrow. I was like, okay. And so I worked hand in hand with them to try to start a union movement that actually picked up really well. We had a meeting outside after work one day of all of us, and there was, around, 15, 20 people. And, we all went, we ate, whatever. And over the course of like 3 weeks, maybe a month, one by one, everyone that was there started getting fired. Just boom, 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 boom. So obviously we had a rat somewhere. Somewhere we had a rat. And they never said anything about unions. They never said anything about union busting, nothing. It was never brought up, but everyone that participated
got
fired. Except me and one other person. I mean,
makes you wonder if they're surveilling you, how they're surveilling, like, following the employees. This is how much they don't want you to unionize. I think employees at Trulieve have to realize that how much they don't want you to.
Oh yeah, and I remember when I left, one of the last things I did was I shook the hand of the director who had just been hired. The director who terminated me. I shook his hand. I told him, thank you for taking all of this extra weight off of my chest. I pitied my replacement, and I hope that the underground union movement that's happening smokes you guys. And he went bug-eyed, absolutely bug-eyed.
Did you tell the truth?
Yeah,
James.
and yeah, and I was like, bye. And it was funny because, and this is going to sound really conceited, but I was a very beloved individual there, because the standard operating procedure when somebody is fired or quits is they are escorted by loss prevention to their vehicle, and they are escorted out of the gate. The loss prevention guys were so mad that I got fired that they were like, look, man, go say bye to whoever you got to say bye to. If you got some stuff you want to put in your car, go ahead. Just, I don't know, man, come see me before you walk out the gate. And I was like, okay. So I'm walking around saying bye to everybody, and all these managers are like, didn't you get fired? And I was like, yeah. They're like, why are you still here? Well, technically I haven't clocked out yet. So,
technically it's like Fight Club. We run this place, not you fools. I mean, that's basically what the, like, lately this movement in the show is proving too. Like, the information we get on the show is from top to bottom. I think Trulieve is now calling our show to get information, actually. Like, seriously. 978. I swear to God, I think I had one of those calls. It's funny. 978-560-3155. This is Mike Crawford. We're speaking to James. He's a Trulieve Florida whistleblower, former employee at Trulieve, the company that we cover quite a bit. We're taking your phone calls. I like how most people have been watching, but been very polite on waiting to ask their questions. We actually have someone who's also standing by. I'm going to bring up in the room in a second. In the green room, more comments came in. I want to read a few of those. Alicia Nicole wrote, Trulieve must spend a lot on carpeting with how much shit they sweep under the rug. Megan writes, she's also a former Trulieve worker. She writes, I think if we were able to get a union in here, it would be very similar to what's going on at Starbucks right now. Yeah, I think that needs to happen. They tried to crush the Starbucks union. It was almost successful, but a lot of places have been unionized over the last year. It really blew up in their face. Alex Miller writes, Trulieve's no retaliation policy. Trulieve prohibits any form of discipline, reprisal, intimidation, or retaliation for reporting a potential conflict of interest or violation. Sounds like they maybe don't follow that. Facebook user also writes, 2 remote supervisors terminated someone in the call center via a Teams call, and he came to me not knowing what to do. LOL. He said I was just fired on a Teams call and I don't know what to do. So lots of crazy stuff being revealed. Let's bring up, I do want to ask, actually, before we have Alicia Nicole who's standing by. I want to bring her into the call. But before I do that, I want to ask you, I want to ask you a couple of things. Quick question was, you were talking about the union when you had the 15, 20 people and then they got picked off. Where was that? Like, was that one location?
So because everybody talks to me and I traveled around the sites and trained other people, it was actually multiple sites. It was multiple locations. And I had actually printed out little flyers and stuff, like real tiny ones, like flashcards almost. And like, hey, like when you walk in the locker room, drop these on the floor. Don't pass them out in front of the cameras. There's cameras everywhere with microphones. Don't drop them there. Drop them in the locker rooms. Drop them like when you're getting something out of the microwave, slide it under your plate and then leave it there. I was like telling people how to do this stuff so we could grow the movement. And so they were from all over. We actually had people down in some of the dispensaries and stuff in South Florida, if I remember correctly.
So what were some of the locations that you were, speaking to people that they were doing some of this? Like
Juniper Creek, Telosia Creek, Higdon, Ben Bostic. Later on was Jeffco, is what they called it, Jeffco for Jefferson County, out of Monticello, Florida. And I know for a fact that at least one of them transferred over to Lee County the Lee County or Madison County in Lee, Florida, called Madco. So every one of their grow sites, every grow site had somebody somewhere that was associated with the union.
Do you think that's happening now? Do you think they killed it? And do you think, like, did the union do anything? Were they able to even do anything about it?
They tried. They tried. Trulieve actually called the sheriff's department out on somebody. Did I freeze or is that me?
No, you're fine.
Oh, okay. I look frozen on my end. So the sheriff's department showed up because somebody associated with the union, they weren't actually part of the union, but they were trying to get an idea of the working conditions. Flew a drone overhead because they were trying to prove that the only place employees had to go when it was really hot were those little wood huts. And Trulieve called the sheriff's department because they're real buddy. They're really tight with each other, and they ran them off. And they didn't just show up with just one car either. They showed up like 3 squad cars deep for one dude flying a drone. And it wasn't one of those big drones. It was just a little micro drone with a camera on it. And but I hope I hope the movement's still alive. Unfortunately, the people that I associate with truly.
Oh, we just did lose you, James. Unfortunately. Hopefully you call right back. Let's try to get James back on the show as soon as possible. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring Alicia Nicole up right now. What's up, Alicia?
Hi, Mike. How's it
How
going?
you doing? You've been listening to the whole show, right, so far?
Yeah, the whole show, and I'm completely blown away by what James said. Like, I can't believe they treat people that inhumanely. I'm blown away by the lack of humanity that's in this company. I mean, it kind of goes to show, like, when I said that people are very expendable in this company, to the point of where they'll deport them, where they have kids and families back home that they're trying to actually, like, keep going. So I'm at a loss for words with how terrible this company actually is. It's like a sweatshop.
Yeah, it is. It is truly like, it's just like, it just gets worse and worse. James was really, I wanted to hear more. I wanted to hear about the health and safety. I hope he calls back in. I think we have him back in. Let's try to get you guys all on together.
Sorry about that.
James, welcome back to the show. This is Alicia Nicole. Her cousin was Lorna McMurray, who passed away at Trulieve in Holyoke, Massachusetts. So she was listening to the whole show as well, and wanted her to comment, and you guys to meet each other. James, did you see or hear anything around health and safety, or even anything about Lorna McMurray when you worked there?
So I am actually to this day still friends with people that were high up the chain as far as health and safety goes. I actually oversaw the creation of our hazmat disposal. When I got hired, there was no hazmat disposal procedures. They were literally pouring stuff down the drain in the outdoor warehouse. They called it the East End.
And where was this? What city or town?
Quincy,
Mass. I mean, Quincy, Florida.
Quincy, Florida. Yeah, they were literally just dumping stuff down the drain. There's a grate there that runs almost from the warehouse door to the back, and it's a really thin drain. And they would just pour anything and everything. It doesn't matter if it was nutrients or peroxide, any of that stuff. It was just going straight down the drain. And one of my jobs prior to this was I worked for a hazmat disposal company, and I was like, yo, this is illegal. This is very illegal. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, y'all don't have somebody in charge of this? They will shut you down. And so they put me in touch with a gentleman named Brad Stutzman, who at the time was the only person responsible for health and safety. And I remember I remember this because it was my mom's birthday. So it was 2019. So February 7th of 2019, I stayed until probably 8 o'clock that night, cutting barrels open with a saw to make disposal barrels that we could pour the waste into and then temporarily hold them until we could get an actual holding situation. And we ended up just sticking them in a Connex box in the summer heat and just leaving them in there for months and months and months and months. But they had absolutely no disposal procedures when I first got hired. And when other stuff became problems, like we had exposed wires that were mixed in with puddles of water outside of the buildings, I would go out and I was like, yo, this is dangerous. Somebody could touch this and they would die. Or we had Lake OSHA at Jefferson County, which was legitimately somewhere like around 8 to 9 foot deep, and it was full of water. It looked like just a big wide puddle, but if you stepped on it, you would disappear. And there was also sewage that would back up and then run down the hill where people walked, because you weren't allowed to drive down there. So you had to walk a quarter of a mile to your building if that's where you worked. And I was like, this is not okay. And the people that were on health and safety, one of the ladies, her name is Sunday, she went to bat to get a lot of it changed, and they just kept pushing her off and just pushing her off and pushing her off. I finally had to threaten to call OSHA one day about locks on the racks that we were putting pallets on for the forklifts and stuff, because all it would take, I'm sure everybody's seen that video where the dude bumps into the rack with a forklift and they all start collapsing. And that happens when you don't have those safety lugs in there.
Right.
Yeah. And I
know about that.
Yeah. And so I for 2 weeks, I put in emails to the maintenance crew who can't operate unless their boss man gives the okay. And they were like, look, man, we can't touch it. Like, we get it. We want to, but we can't touch it until he signs off on it. And I was like, all right. So I called his personal cell phone and I was like, dude, I am going to call OSHA in the next 10 minutes. If you do not get somebody out here to fix this. And I cited the actual OSHA section. I was like, this is in violation of yada, 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 yada. And then he starts cussing me for all I'm worth. Do you know what I've got on my plate right now? I said, I don't care what you got on your plate. You are the head of the department. That is your job. That's why you make a 6-figure salary, because you're supposed to be able to handle this. And I'm not going to let my guys get hurt or get killed because you are stressed out. I'm stressed out because I have to worry about my guys physically dying because you don't want to do your job. And anyway, I hung up on him and I started looking at the number I needed to call. And then sure enough, around the corner, 2 of the maintenance guys came around with a drill and they were like, hey, I don't know what you said, but we got the okay. We can start doing this now. And I'm like, appreciate that. See, this is so hard.
Knows to call OSHA. Speaking of OSHA, do you know of any OSHA complaints that were filed? Like, about any specific
lot.
Instances? Yeah.
They actually got fined like $30,000 for not providing respirators to the people at the Higdon facility. Yeah, right. And it was this big ordeal because one of my first months on the job, I think it was like my second or third month there, I have like 4 people run around the corner sprinting. They're not jogging. They're sprinting like they're running from a tsunami. And they're like, OSHA's here. Come with me. And I was like, what? And so we're like hiding all of these exposed wires and like throwing stuff up in the attic and trying to hide it. And where OSHA messes up, and I'm calling OSHA out on this, before OSHA shows up, they call ahead of time and say, hey, on Thursday the 19th, we're coming. That is the dumbest thing you can do. If you're trying to inspect somebody, you don't tell them you're coming. And it's just like in the military. Hey, Colonel so-and-so is going to be here in 2 weeks. We got to make sure everything's pristine. So they come and they get this really beautiful view of what they think it is, but the day-to-day mission is completely different. The day-to-day environment is awful. And it was the same way at Trulieve, because OSHA would call and say, hey, we're going to be there on the 19th. And so and to be honest, that day when they showed up and there was that mass panic, they actually tried to keep the people from OSHA, the OSHA representatives, in the office talking long enough for us and the maintenance crew to start throwing stuff up in the attic and hiding it. And that was the norm. You know, if OSHA was coming, we would just start trying to toss stuff up on the roof, you know, places they're not going to go. And it was insane because it's dangerous. People get hurt, you know, and in worst case scenarios, you know, people don't go home.
Let me ask you
And
another question.
Anything with acid
Mold.
inspection.
Yeah, mold and respiratory keeps coming up a lot. Did you see that a lot? Did
oh,
you see
oh
people coming
yeah,
down with respiratory
mold
issues?
was great. Mold was your friend. You just
No.
learned to embrace the mold because it was everywhere in the dry rooms. So at the Ben Bostic facility in the dry area, in the back behind the building, there was a mobile home that they converted into a dry room. I helped them convert it, and the amount of mold was disgusting. So Trulieve, because there is an acceptable amount of mold that can be on your product and you still ship it out. And I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 0.6%, something like that. I can't remember the exacts. But so instead of doing whole batch tests, Trulieve would have employees dig through bad batches, find the least messed up one, and then they would check it and be like, oh, this one passed, that batch is good, and then they would pass it on to the customer. And I'm like, dude, this is awful. And so they threatened to fire me because I was like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna go back to my department. Y'all have fun. And they were like, this is an all hands situation. I got no hands. I would literally, I was that guy. I would literally like pull my sleeve down and be like, well, I got no hands. I can't help you in a hands-on situation. And I would leave.
Yeah.
And it was great because at the time I knew they couldn't fire me. I knew they couldn't because I was the only person that knew how to do my job.
Yeah,
I was the only person.
You had leverage. You had what they call leverage.
Yeah. And
let me bring up a few more comments. Caleb
ahead.
Teskey asked, "What happened to the barrels that they put in the Conex boxes? What happened to that stuff? All the chemicals? You think?"
So I reached out to, again, this, mind you, I am a material handling lead. I'm supposed to be in charge of the warehouse. I'm not supposed to be in charge of hazmat disposal. But I ended up having to call a company. I called Crystal Clean, and the Nick, who was the site manager for Crystal Clean, and him and I knew each other from my previous job. And I was like, hey man, if you want a solid contract, I got you. So he comes down, gives a quote, checks out, and he was like, yeah, these need to go. These need to go like yesterday. There's stuff everywhere. It's all on the floor. And so they're like, okay, we'll get you an inventory, let you know how many barrels. And he's like, all right. So he leaves. Who do you think they got to do the inventory?
You.
Me. I almost died. So I'm in this Connex box. It is like July. Yeah. So it was like July or August. At the time, the site manager's name was Jordan Miranda. Super cool guy. I am in this Connex box where if you take a heat gun and you point it at the wall, it tells you it's 142 degrees inside.
Yeah.
It's hot. And so I'm in there and I'm in blue jeans, I'm in work boots, and it's hot. I mean, I'm sweating and I'm crawling over these drums, over these barrels. I'm getting all these chemicals, all these nutrients and stuff. I'm getting them all in my pants, all everywhere. And the further back you get, the harder it gets to breathe because of all of the fumes and the heat. And so as I'm in there, I start to get dizzy and I'm like, I'm passing out. Like I'm conscious enough to know what's happening and I know what I need to do. And so like I'm scrambling to get over these barrels and I get to the edge and I just kind of like, and I just drop. And when I dropped, I flipped over the last barrel, and I fell onto the asphalt and like I roll over and I leaned up on the Connex box and I can't see. Everything's real blurry. And I'm sitting there and Jordan comes around the corner and he's like, hey man, you good? And I should have said no, but the jarhead in me was like, hey, I'm fine. I'm just hot. I'm just sitting down for a second. And so he walks off and I could have died. I could have died right there. But luckily I made it out of the door and was able to get them their count. I actually still think I have the book that I was carrying. It's covered in chemicals. I don't know exactly where I just moved. So it's somewhere in this thing, but I still have that book where I was keeping tally of all of the chemical barrels and stuff. But after like 6 more months, they had a different company come out and haul off the chemicals and stuff, but I only ever saw their trucks twice, and then I never saw them again after that. They just went back to store them in the Connex boxes.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry, I know
we
that was
do
a really long tangent.
Yeah, hey, it's a good one. It's just
You're lucky to
very
be alive.
interesting, and how you almost died at Trulieve. 978-560-3155. And then you have a laugh about it. You're like, oh, it was fun time. I almost died at Trulieve. But hey, I
Well,
mean,
it
if it
happened
doesn't kill you, it
twice,
made you stronger. Now you get to tell a good story.
right?
We're talking about Trulieve tonight. You saw a lot there. We've covered the gamut. Is there anything that you think that we should touch on that we haven't talked about at Trulieve tonight, James?
In all honesty, between the amount of OSHA violations and the poor work environments, one of my biggest gripes that I had, and when I say this, I am not attacking the department that does it. They do it out of necessity, but it's the drivers. We had drivers pulling in some of the most ludicrous overtime. Now, mind you, to my knowledge, these drivers still have to follow DOT regulations because you're still operating a box truck on the highway. I have an email that I sent it out because otherwise they wouldn't have gotten recognition for it, where they came in at like 7:45 in the morning and did not go home until past 11:30 at night, and they were in trucks the whole time. The DOT, to my knowledge, only allows 10 hours. It might be 12, but I know after that you have to take what's called your mandatory 10. And they definitely pulled more than 10 hours, and they definitely pulled more than 12 hours. They were pulling 14, 15, 16-hour days driving these trucks. And then, funny enough, we have somebody flip a truck like a week after I get let go. They flipped a truck at the intersection where you go to Thomasville, Georgia from Monticello. Excuse me, off of West Caps Highway. And I think it's just people are exhausted. They're tired. But I sent that email out giving them recognition because I knew otherwise they wouldn't even get recognized for it. And plus that, and I wanted to be able to pull it up later in case somebody needed it. Like, hey, man, you got anything where, you can show we were working in dangerous conditions? Oh, yeah, baby, I got you. Hold on. Because at the end of the day, like I said, I want everyone to be safe. I've worked in dangerous jobs. I mean, I was in the military. Every day is dangerous depending on your job. And I want everyone to be able to go home. I want everybody to be safe because nobody wants to die at work. Look, if I die, please let me be in my sleep or before I get to work. Don't let me die at or because of work.
Right.
That's awful.
That's awful. That's not the way it's supposed to go. 978-560-3155. If you're a Trulieve employee that wants to call in, we got a call right now. Let's take the call. I also want to read some more comments that are coming in, but let's take the phone call first if we can get them up. Hold on 1 second.
Oh,
all right. I think I know who's on the phone. Who's on the phone tonight?
Hey, this is Danny Carson calling in. How's it going, everybody?
Good. How you doing, Danny?
Good. Hey, I just wanted to say thanks for speaking up. This has been really, informative, and I think, I'm also a whistleblower for Trulieve in Massachusetts, and it's hard to even remember all of the little things that went on at the facility because there were so many of them. And, you like so clearly were able to outline exactly why people are so scared to talk and speak up. People work in these conditions all day and they think it's normal. I'm also a veteran. I was in the Air Force for 6 years before I worked for Trulieve. And, there's just, you have to use your voice. You have to look out for your people, just like you were doing. Sticking up for other people and like supervising truly and like leading is really, really vitally important. And, I hope that if any supervisors are listening tonight, they do the similar things and at least shift gears to understand that these things are not normal. You should not have to work in these conditions. You shouldn't be scared to speak up about them and ask questions and demand you be treated like a human being. And I really appreciate you speaking up because it really it adds so much value to this conversation we're having about Trulieve in general. So thanks for doing that. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, it's the only way we're going to see any change and make sure that everybody gets to go home at the end of the day. And real quick, I just sent you a link to a Google Drive document where I had to make a PowerPoint. I don't know if you want to take a look at it later, where it was so dangerous that I made a PowerPoint and presented it to the head of health and safety because of the way we were having to unload trucks. And so in that, you'll see video of how we had to do stuff and lift pallet jacks over our heads and stuff like that. It was great. It was
Did
great.
you send me an email with that information, James?
I sent it to, I think I sent it to you via text.
Oh,
I
via
hope
text,
that was
okay.
you I sent it to.
All right, I will
Yeah.
definitely check it out. That's the other thing. My question for you tonight is I want you to send me all the documents that I haven't seen yet. I want to send me everything. But I want to thank Danny for calling in. Danny Carson, thank you so much for calling in tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, I'm glad you and James are connecting here too. Two whistleblowers at Trulieve. Danny, you also have a you sound perfect tonight. I'm glad you did the phone call tonight. You have an event
Yeah,
coming up on Wednesday at 4 p.m., right?
yeah, that's tomorrow at 4 p.m. It's going to be the Coalition for Cannabis Workers Safety. It's going to be the first meeting we have to really talk amongst anybody from inside the industry, outside the industry, who just wants to make change for cannabis workers in general. We'd be more than happy to have anybody listening to join in, even just to listen to the conversation. And really start to all collaborate on this, because as we can see, we leave it to OSHA. They don't do their job well enough. We leave it to the state level regulators. They don't do it either. So we're all just going to have to do it together. And we'll find a way to hold them accountable and make sure that cannabis workers are safe. So if you want to join the conversation, anybody that's listening, anybody here, I'd gladly have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so proud of what you're doing, because last night, like we kicked it off tonight with the state senator, and the questions were from you. It was the work that you did with folks like Liz and Brenda and the different organizations. So I wanted to, and the workers, obviously, I want to thank you so much for what you're doing right now, Danny. It's making a big difference. People of power are noticing it, and I'm very thankful for you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate your coverage on it, and to James and Allison for being here. It's very important work. So thanks for everybody. And I guess that'll be it for me from tonight.
Awesome. That is Danny Carson. Very proud to have him as an advocate and a friend and supporter of what we're all doing. And we're doing this together. Danny Carson was a co-worker of Lorna McMurray. And Alicia, I should have had you say something to Danny tonight. You want to have any comment on this too?
Danny's been a big help to this family initially. My grandma's in the background. She's listening right now. He's been a big help in terms of, like, when my cousin first got hired on, she was a late bloomer, but she loved what she was doing to the very end. She absolutely loved her job and was hoping to get to a different company or different dispensary per se, but it was because of Danny that she was happy, because of Danny hiring her there. And she was just starting off. She found her niche. But
I'm some more comments come in too. I want to read. Trying to figure out which one to read first. So we'll read this one. Facebook user wrote, "If it took someone falling through the floor for Trulieve to fix the rotting wood in our inventory room at Dale Marbury, Trulieve doesn't care about their employees." Another Trulieve employee speaking out. Another Trulieve employee on Facebook, Megan, who's been on the show, she writes, "It's the same with DOH inspections as well. We always knew the day before at a minimum that morning." So talking about inspections, that they get the tip off. I've seen that on the state level too. The state, it was so ridiculous. They were doing a virtual inspection.
Oh, the Zoom
Yeah,
inspection?
remember that? I mean, they talk about a tip off. Point the camera over here.
Yes.
Megan has another comment. She says there was a driver who fell asleep on the road coming from the logistics warehouse maybe a year and a half ago.
I believe it.
And another Facebook user, who I believe is an ex-employee as well, writes, "I remember working an overnight shift at Trulieve and then being asked to come back at noon after getting off at 6 a.m.
God.
And Megan wrote, "Always because they couldn't get anyone to work on Sunday." So it's funny. Trulieve employees are talking to each other in our chat, which
I completely forgot about the DOH inspections. I actually loved DOH inspections And the reason for that is they would come in, they're like, DOH is here, disappear. And so we would go into our cars and lay back. We had to be laid back, and we would watch movies. Or my buddy brought a tarp one day. He had a pickup truck, and so we knew DOH was coming, and we were gonna have to disappear for like 2 to 3 hours. And so we put the tarp over the truck, had a little window unit with air conditioning, and we were watching TV, like watching movies in the back of the truck because we had to stay out of the way because DOH was there. Because they did, and it amazed me because they were like, we don't want any dirt on the floor in the potting area. It's the potting area. There's always dirt here, and it was just. But that's what they would do. DOH is going to be here. Go away. That's the reason. So I had to start biting my lip because it was so funny to me. But those days were great because I mean I had 2 hours, 3 hours, but I didn't have to do anything, and I got paid for it. And just go hide out in my car, just and watch a movie.
So we're the Young Jerks. We're speaking to James. He's a Trulieve Florida worker who's speaking out. Talk about his experience there. A couple things I wanted to just ask you towards the end here is, if let's just say that Trulieve management or Kim herself is listening. I mean, rule number one is she should call in. Call in tonight, Kim. Call in, Kim. 978-560-3155. Call in, Kim. But what would your advice to them be, James, at this point? And also, what would your advice be to like regulators or people even on a state level like Connecticut or Georgia who are deciding to give Trulieve their first licenses? What would your advice to those states be? And what would your advice be to Trulieve themselves?
With Kim, my advice would be practice what you preach. You talk about being inclusive and caring about people and how we're supposed to function as a team. You have a whole ditty based around it. And you talk about how it's important for people to be able to speak up and speak their mind, even if it's not something you want to hear. At the end of the day, something you don't want to hear is probably something you need to hear. If you want everyone to be happy, which means increased productivity because a happy employee is a functioning employee, then it would behoove you to take what they say to heart and improve upon it versus condemning the people for wanting to work, for wanting to enjoy where they work. In other words, wanting to be able to stay working there. They like working for you so much that they want it to be safe and enjoyable so they can keep coming back. It's not them taking you down or trashing the company. It's them wanting to make it better. So stop attacking them for it. As far as regular employees, don't be quiet. Don't be quiet. I was a loudmouth for 2 years and 11 months. It took them 2 years and 11 months to finally gather the cojones to make me go away. And the only time we ever saw change is when I was so loud that everyone heard me. When I went out there and showed my butt and raised my voice and got stuff done. And I made sure that everyone heard me. And as far as state legislators, when it comes to cannabis, I'm a firm believer in the fact that it helps people. I remember seeing the thank you messages from customers, even on return products. Somebody slipped $50 into a return package and a thank you note. It was really cool. But talking, and I personally have friends, guys that I served in the Marine Corps with, who were able to get off of their PTSD medications, their anxiety medications, because of cannabis. So I believe that it definitely can help people. I believe that it is a much safer pastime than getting drunk and wanting to go pick bar fights. I do, however, believe that the chance and the opportunity should be given to your local people first, the people who are from your state, and that these big corporations like Trulieve, if you do decide to let them in, need to be monitored like you would monitor your own house, your own home, who is in your house and what are they doing. Because I promise you, the amount of money, the amount of legal pull that they have will allow them the ability to undermine the initial intent of whatever it is that you tell them they can or cannot do.
Thank you so much for speaking out tonight, James. Alicia, Nicole, do you have any final comments too on any of this tonight?
What he was talking about with how you should be able to take like what people are telling you is wrong. Like the truth hurts. It's initially the thing that'll set you free. If you're sitting there like ignoring all these problems and hoping that they're going to go away until they just build up and your corporation just falls through the floor like that person did in Florida, then you're not going to have a corporation to stand on anymore. I mean, the people that are working for you are the foundation to your business. They are the people that you should be genuinely concerned about their safety, their well-being, and the way that they're going to manage your system. Like it's a wheel and a cog kind of thing. Like if you don't grease the wheel and make sure that it's healthy and not rusting, or like, you know, it's going to all just fall to shit. Like, what do you expect? I mean, you got all the, just because your lenders for all your money isn't really paying attention and you're trying to sweep it under the rug that way by like, it makes no sense to me how you can just make these people expendable, bring in younger people that have no knowledge. So you can just like, I guess, take advantage of them too. And then when you're done with them, you just fling them back into the world and be like, sorry, we got a replacement for you. You know, like they gave the supervisor that was there for my cousin a promotion, you know, after she just died. Like that's the kind of company that Trulieve is. That's the kind of company that Kim Rivers owns. That's why she's never going to call in, because she, unless it's a paid off scripted show and she pays you to, you know, say what she wants you to say, she's not going to bother with you, because it questions her authority. It undermines her authority. It makes her look bad. But she's doing a good job at already looking bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if she can do much. Call in Kim is our new motto here. Call in Kim. Hashtag call in Kim. Call in tonight, Kim. 978-560-3155. It's that easy. Any Trulieve employee who wants to call in can do so. We got a couple more comments I want to read too.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear her
one right
opinion.
here. Hillary writes, I'm on YouTube. I like the YouTube comments. We got a lot of Facebook comments tonight. Here's a YouTube one. She writes, I'm glad you guys continue to do this. Hashtag Florida. Another comment from another employee at Trulieve on Facebook says, from Kim's welcome letter that we read on the first day of training, joining Trulieve will be one of the best decisions you have ever made. Liar.
Oh,
Danny
man.
Carson's listening. He writes, hashtag call in Kim. Call in Kim. Hashtag call in Kim. Another one on YouTube. Hillary writes, hashtag true lies.
Yep.
We got all the hashtags going tonight.
Yeah, I love it. I'd love to hear Kim's opinion on the female employee that had her arm caught up in a machine and they had to call the fire department to come cut her out at the Higdon site, or the explosion that happened at the Higdon site like 3 months ago. I'd love to hear her talk about those.
Yeah, especially when she's, you know, talking about she's minority, women-owned business and claiming awards and all those things. I understand that you have to go back to work too as well, Alicia Nicole.
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here, especially because of what you guys continue to do and how you continue to help the workers in this field. Like, it's not going to get better until we start making it better ourselves. And I'm just instead of my cousin because she can't be here. So
thank you so much, and enjoy yourself tonight at work.
I will. I always do. I'm a cashier and I love what I do. So
thank you. Have a great night, Alicia Nicole. We're the Young Jerks. My name is Mike Crawford. We've got a lot going on tonight. We got a guest, James, that we're talking to about Trulieve. I also want to make sure that I promote the event that we're doing too. We got this workers event that we're doing. It's the Young Jerks Cannabis Workers Awards. For many years on April, at the end of April, the beginning of May is my birthday. And on one of my birthdays, before we decriminalized and did medical and legal in Massachusetts, I got arrested on my birthday for cannabis. And so one of the things I've done over the years since then, a lot of times with Mass Can Normal, when I was, doing the decrim medical and legal, is we did a lot of fundraisers on my birthday every year. We'd have a birthday party event and we would raise money for the cause to try to change the law, since I got busted on my birthday. And this year, a couple of years back, we did a Young Jerks award show where we honored a lot of local politicians and cannabis industry folks with our first award show, a lot of our past guests. This year, we're calling it the Cannabis Workers Awards. We're focusing on the workers this time. So we hope you'll come out. It's May 7th. It's in Somerville, Massachusetts. It's going to be a great event. We're about to make a lot of announcements about who we've nominated for awards and all of that. You can check it out on midnightmass.substack.com. Please subscribe to us. If you're just listening for the first time, you like what we do, please share it, but do more than that. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on iTunes, all those places that we're at, because we provide a lot of information. And if you're only on one thing, you might miss it, especially if you're not even subscribed to the place you're listening right now. But check us out at The Young Jerks. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me, and especially on Twitter too, at The Young Jerks, and our iTunes. Please rate us, review us, give us 5-star ratings on there as well. And if you can, come out to the event May 7th. It's going to be a great event in Somerville, Massachusetts. Half of the proceeds that we raise that night, if there's any profit on top of what we're spending for the event, we're going to donate to some of the top honorees that night, which will be some of the workers. So we're really excited. This is really about an opportunity to do some networking among the community that we're creating among workers. It's also an opportunity to raise awareness locally with the press and some of the other media folks and organizers as well. And it's also a great opportunity, hopefully, to raise some money and especially just support, because there's people who've been fired fighting for this. We've done a lot of shows on this and a lot of workers that come forward, and we want to make this night about them. So if you're interested in sponsoring, supporting the event, hit us up. But we're going to be promoting much more, and tickets have gone on sale. You can check out the venue, the Rockwell, Somerville, Massachusetts. I want to thank James so much for sticking by me while I'm giving the pitch on the event. Do you have any final thoughts before we let you go tonight, James?
I mean, I saw where Caleb asked about the lady who had her arm stuck in it. I don't know what the machine was called. I know that it had essentially like double rollers. She was a new employee and had been instructed to clean the machine, had not been trained on how to clean the machine, and her lead and her supervisor left her in the room alone to clean the machine. And so she had the rollers running to try to scrape the rollers clean. And when she did, she got caught and it snatched her into the machine. And naturally she started screaming, and they run over there. And if I remember correctly, somebody actually had to pull the machine out of the plug because there's no emergency stop. They had to unplug the machine. And the fire department showed up and ended up having to cut her out of the machine. It had gone up, I think, to her elbow, but it might have been her shoulder. But luckily, she didn't receive super terrible injuries. She maintained most of the use of her hand and her arm. But yeah, that was a big stink that went down there. It's just, I'm always willing to like, ever since they told me that I burnt bridges, I'm here now to show them, like, I know I will show you a burnt bridge. I mean, I was there long enough to get a lot of experiences and see a lot of things, and just see how they treat people. One of my favorite memories from Trulieve, and I actually have a video from that day. I took a sick day because I was very sick. I was throwing up, running a fever. They called me in, told me I had to come into work at the new site in Lee, Florida. And I had to unload an entire big rig truck by myself, meaning drive the big forklift because I was the only certified person, hop off the forklift, load the items manually onto the forklift because there were these 350-gallon drums, load them on there manually, hop off the truck, hop back on the forklift, buckle up, take it, drive it where it needed to go, and rinse and repeat. And I did that 24 times. And it was really hot. And I was, like I said, I was really sick, but I took a video just out of frustration, and they still took my sick day from me. They still took my sick day. That was great. They took my sick day from me and made me come in on my day off when I was sick. That was great. But yeah, I'm actually super glad that this is being done. I'm super stoked to see it getting more traction. I hope that somebody forces Kim to sit down and watch this. I hope that the people who invest in this company, I hope the investors see this, and I hope that they force her to sit down into that little fancy office of hers that she had built, and they make her watch this. I pray that that's what they do, because I hope their numbers tank. I hope their stock tanks, and I hope that it draws so much attention because people finally find out what's going on and how people are being treated, that they have to move mountains, and which means moving her. They have to get rid of her. And I'm hoping that's what it comes down to, because she is a terrible, terrible person.
Now,
And
that
this is
question
just
that
great.
Caleb had asked, he said, "Can we hear more about the woman who got her arm stuck in a machine?" You told us about that. Where was that location? And was there
Higdon.
an OSHA complaint on that as well or not?
It was at the Higdon facility in Quincy, Florida. When you're coming into Quincy, it's on the right hand side, past the Dollar General. But yeah, I don't know if OSHA ever got involved in that. I don't think they did. They tried really hard to brush that under the rug. Luckily, employees talk when something like that happens, and so we all found out within 20 minutes of it happening. Hey, there's a girl here getting cut out of a machine. But yeah, I don't think OSHA ever got involved in that.
Hashtag call out Kim is like trending on our chat right now. Everyone's doing that. Call out Kim. No, I'm saying call in Kim. We are calling her out, but we want Kim to call in. Get some guts, Kim, and call in. You got a few minutes before we, wrap up the show.
Got plenty of time.
Kyle says, hello, Mike. A Facebook user writes, these shows only get better. James, you did a hell of a job. Very well spoken and a wealth of information. This river runs deep. Love seeing Lorna's family here too.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much too, James, for calling in tonight and spending time with us. I want to thank all of our listeners and supporters. And I also want to thank all the workers out there because this story just continues to get advanced because of them. And I salute you. I salute you, James. And we're the Young Jerks. I'm not sure when we'll be back. I think Sunday night is probably the next show. I think we're going to do a show with some lawyers to kind of give some legal advice, some employment advice to workers dealing with, non-disclosure agreements and workman comp and other things related to the cannabis industry. So we're going to continue on this. If you're a Trulieve worker, a Curaleaf worker, wherever you work in the industry, if you want to share your story, you can definitely do so with us on or off the records, on or off the record. Definitely hit us up. And if you want to find out more about the meeting that's happening on Wednesday that Danny Carson is organizing for workers, definitely hit me up. I can link you with that as well. Again, we're the Young Jerks. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank James for being here. We will see everyone very soon. And again, I want to thank you so much, James.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Did you enjoy this tonight?
Oh, absolutely loved it. I've got to get a whole lot of stuff off of my chest and expose a whole lot of things that needed to be exposed. And
anything that we didn't, I keep bringing this up and you bring us more stories, but was there anything that we need to talk about tonight?
Offhand, I think that was the gist of it. And like you said, you wanted me to send you emails with documents and stuff. I will send you every email that I've got after this is over. I will happily send you those. And I found out it wasn't 10:30 p.m. that they quit working. It was 2:30 a.m. They did deliveries from 8 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. and then had to be back at work at 7:30 in the morning. Yeah, that's dangerous. But yeah, Caleb, yeah, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. However, I guess Mike can probably put you in touch with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Caleb's asking right now. Final comment tonight from our listeners. They keep coming in. People are definitely all over the show tonight. Caleb Teskey, who hosts the Fine Print, says, James, I'd like to follow up on this with you. Have you on my podcast. You are the exact type of person we need to hold these people accountable. And Caleb's very good at this as well. So I think you guys would get along very well. So I'm definitely thinking that should happen. Caleb says, thank you. Again, we're the Young Jerks. We'll see everyone soon. And again, if you're just listening tonight or just started following us from Florida or any place, definitely make sure you're liking and subscribing. Make sure you're following us and staying up on all the notifications. And please, if you're in Massachusetts, please consider checking out our event that's coming up May 7th. It's a Sunday in Somerville. I can't wait to see everyone. We're the Young Jerks. I'll see everyone real soon. Thank you so much, James. Thank you to all listeners. We'll see you next time, everyone.